Hi, everybody. I'm Alyce-Kay Ruckelhaus from the How Initiative and SufferingWell. And today I have a very special guest, my mother. She's going to talk about prayer walking. Now, she's done some really, really long prayer walks, like all the way across the United States, from Washington State down to Key West, Florida, the longest way you could go. But today we're going to talk about prayer walking for normal people. So don't get scared. This is stuff you can do. So in the How novel, Whispers Around the World, we talk a little bit about prayer walking. In fact, one of the characters, Paulette, really enjoys prayer walking, and she teaches the rest of the group about prayer walking. And you hear about their adventure prayer walking and what they thought of it later and how that affected them. So without any further ado, let's talk to my mom, Lyn Hanush.
And I have my mom here with me, and her name's Lyn Hanush. Mom, do you want to say anything to everybody?
I have a wonderful daughter named Alyce-Kay who is right there, and
see the halo,
Mom.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about prayer walking for normal people. If you have heard me talk about my mom, or you've seen any of the interviews that I've done with her, sometimes we talk about her prayer walks. She's walked all the way across the U.S. She's walked both coasts and praying, and she's prayer walked a lot of other places too, but we realize that that's like too much for most people to do. Most of you can't just walk out on your family. Like my dad used to tell people that his wife walked out on him when she was on these prayer walks. Most of you can't do that. And so we just want to talk about what like everyday normal people can do in the area of prayer walking. And so I think that this would be a really cool thing just to be able to share like some ideas for how you prayer walk. And also, don't leave us if you don't walk. Okay, like I can't walk, you guys. I have mobility issues. There are other ways that you can prayer walk without actually walking. And for sometimes, like if it's really hot, it might not be safe for you to go out and walk. And so there's other things that you can do that are kind of like prayer walking. So we're going to talk about that. Mom, first of all, what is prayer walking?
Prayer walking involves being able to pray for people. Like I pray around this community from time to time where I live. I live in a senior community, and I walk around and I pray for the people. If I know who lives in a home, I'll pray specifically for them by name. If I don't know of them, I just pray for whoever's in that home. And sometimes I meet people along my way and I'll talk to them and I'll say, is there something I can pray for you about? And a lot of times they respond with yes. And I know right after I moved here, one gal, the second day I was walking, I think it was, she stopped her car. She was on her way to work and she stopped her car, and I told her, asked her if there was something I could pray for her. And I have been praying for that for a long time. And she finally just recently shared that she had an answer to that prayer.
Wow, that's so
cool.
That
was pretty cool.
So what are the advantages to prayer walking as opposed to just sitting at home praying for people?
Actually getting out there and seeing things and meeting people and talking to people, or feeling what's going on in an area, it makes such a difference because you have a better idea of how to pray. Sometimes just by what you see in a yard, when you're not in the senior community here, because we don't see that much that tells us that much about it. But like in other communities, you see children's toys in a yard, there are children there. And so you pray for those parents and how they're raising their children. You pray for those children that they will be, grow up learning to be obedient children and to love God and things like that. So you can tell just by the things you see in a house. Meticulously clean yard and such just gives you ideas of how to pray. There probably aren't children,
right? Yeah.
And different things like that. So, or maybe you see flowers, real pretty flowers, and means they've got a gardener in there that loves somebody that loves the garden. And so that's an area you can pray for them, or
Mhm.
begin to talk to them if you see them out in the yard.
Yeah, and you can see things about people's religious beliefs. You
Mhm.
know, if you see some Christian symbols, then you know to pray for their faith and everything. And if you see something that's very anti-Christian, then that's definitely something to pray for as well.
Bumper stickers on cars.
Oh,
And
yeah, those are very helpful. What if you pass by a house and you really don't have any clues for what to pray? What do you do then?
then you just pray that God will, he can see, and you give it to him and you say, okay, Lord, you know what's going on in this home, what they need and what they don't need.
Mhm.
Um, and I just pray that you will meet those specific needs. And then you trust God with it.
Yeah, he
That's all
knows
you
what they
can
need.
do.
He doesn't
Yeah,
really need us to tell him, but for some
he
reason
knows so
he
much better.
likes it when we do, you know, but because it's a way of
Mhm.
having conversation with him and everything. But yeah, yeah. And how do you feel like you benefit from prayer walking?
I benefit from prayer walking because I get to meet people for one thing and share with people, and they share with me and I share with them, so we share with each other. But being able to pray for somebody, just it makes me draw closer to God, because I'm talking to God, and talking to God is an intimate relationship with God. And so when you're in prayer, you are in an intimate relationship, and it just makes you come closer to God. And it's exciting then when if you do see answers. Sometimes you will, many times you will not see answers. You will never
Right.
know
Yeah.
what happens.
Well, you
But
will know probably in heaven.
yes, that's true.
You'll get to meet those people. Jesus will introduce you to
Yeah.
somebody and say, you prayed for this woman. And you're going, she doesn't look familiar to me. Well, she was in the greenhouse, you know,
Yeah.
or something, you know, and he's going to introduce you to that person. And they're probably just going to start weeping, and you're going to start weeping because of the answers to prayer, because you prayed for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just really cool.
And
Yeah.
I can I can tell of one experience when I first started doing any prayer walking. It was through our church in Santa Clara.
Hmm.
And the church was having a prayer ministry around the neighborhood. And so they sent us out 2 by 2 to pray at certain sections of the neighborhood. We each had certain
Oh,
sections.
wow.
And many times we would see people out, and Dad and I walked together for that. We did that together, and
Mhm.
we saw people out in their yards, and we would talk to them and ask how we could be praying for them. And many of them gave us ways. One guy I will never forget, he said, "Don't pray for me. I won't have anything to do with religion." And
Well, that gave you something to pray for.
it we walked away from there knowing what we were going to be praying.
Right.
And we would see him again, and he was always friendly. But if we said anything about prayer, he clammed up and would turn his back on us. And so I have no idea if he's ever come to the Lord, but we sure prayed. And
Just
I
a
hope.
tip out there for those of you who don't want people praying for you. The worst thing you can say is don't pray for me, because we will pray for you.
We can't help it.
Yeah,
Really
you've
can't.
just told us that you need us to pray for you, so we will.
That's right.
That's probably not true of anybody watching this. I don't know why you would be watching this if you don't want people praying for you. So,
That's right.
so what if somebody can't walk, or it's too hot outside, or they have a whole bunch of little children and it's hard for them to walk with little children? Although I walked with my little children, but it is hard for my kids were trained from the time my oldest daughter, when she was 2, walked 6 miles. Okay, so that just kind of gives you an idea. So they were trained from the time they were little, but I know a lot of people can't do that, so that's okay. What are some ways that you can prayer walk without walking?
You can prayer walk from your home, just by thinking of places or people that need prayer, and be praying for them. I know I have read stories of people who have been bedridden, and they pray for individuals across the nation. And people send them, sometimes send them letters. They hear about her and send her letters. I don't even know if
Wow.
she's still alive now, but I've heard of others like that too. So
Yeah.
So there are many ways you can be driving in your car and be praying, and pray for people you see along the way. Walking through a grocery store, you can be praying for people there, because you see a lot of things going on in a grocery store. Little children crying, or pulling at their parents, or whatever, or old people kind of bent over walking through the store.
Right. You know, I just thought of something that a lot of people may not realize is you can pray in your heart without praying out loud. So when you're walking through the grocery store, you're not probably praying out loud. You don't have to even move your lips. And you can pray for people, because God can hear your thoughts, and he knows what those are. In fact, Psalm 139 says he knows our thoughts even before we think them. So you can just pray that way. You don't have to pray out loud. So just in case anybody was wondering about my mom walking through a grocery store, Lord, I praise you for this person and help her children and blah, blah, whatever. Yeah, she's not doing that.
No, definitely not.
And sometimes, because I have walked, when I was able to walk, I have walked my neighborhoods. And so I know my whole community really well, because I used to walk all over my town. And so I'll sit on my porch where I can see a lot of the town. I'm on a hill and I can see a lot of the town, and I will pray that way, kind of like imagining walking down those, and I can remember a lot of the houses, and I'll be praying for people that way. You can also, if you don't know your community really well, you can say, okay, Lord, I'm going to pray for my neighborhood. I'm going to pray for my community. I'm going to pray for the schools. And if you know the individual schools, you can pray for them. You can pray for the police. You can pray for the firemen, for the hospital. I have a hospital right across the street from me, so that's a big thing for me to pray for. And just, think through the different things that are in your community or your town or your city, and pray that way. And how do you prayer drive?
As you drive, you can be praying for things along the way, that you see, businesses as well as individuals and people that you see walking along. We were driving through Minnesota during the walk, but it was a part we were driving at the time. And we were in the big city part, and there were a lot of people crossing the street. And my immediate thought was, pray for these people. They need God. And, probably 2/3 of them didn't know God, maybe more than that. You just don't know. And so you pray that for them, that they will meet God in a way that will cause them to want that personal relationship with Jesus Christ.
Right. Well, and also, while you're either driving, or like I said, I live across the street from a hospital, so I hear sirens quite a bit. That can also be something that just triggers prayer for you. You can get yourself into the habit of stopping and just praying for the people who are being transported to the hospital, or if you've got a fire truck going by, it might be a fire, it might be something else, but just praying for those first responders. When you're stuck in traffic because of an accident, instead of complaining about how horrible it is, consider that there's somebody who's hurt, or maybe they're not hurt, but their car is wrecked, and that can be really traumatic for people and can be very difficult, and they need prayer. Or somebody who died. My husband died in a car accident, and traffic was held up for hours because of that. And I hope that there were people, well, I know that there were, because there were 4 men who stopped and they went to him while he was dying, and they were praying for him. And so sorry.
Yeah.
So you can really minister to somebody that way.
Yeah.
And it helps me as his widow to know that people were doing that too.
Absolutely. And I've had experiences where I've been in the hospital for short hospital stays, and have prayed for the people around me, especially in emergency rooms. People come in for all different reasons. Some of them are very serious, some of them not so serious. And it's a good time to be praying for them. I pray for the doctors and the nurses, and I will not forget the one experience I had probably about 1.5 years ago. And I ended up in the hospital emergency room, and it was a couple of nights before they actually had a room open for me in the hospital itself. And but during that time, I was praying for all different ones. And then when I was moved to a room, the nurse that was taking care of me, I shared with her that I prayed a lot, and that if she had anything that I could pray specifically for. Well, she came in and visited me a couple of times when she didn't have so much to do, and asked me to pray specifically.
Wow.
One morning, I was awakened by a technician who had come in very early in the morning to run a test on me. It was the only time he had that he could fit me in. So he gave me a moment to get awake, to go use the bathroom
Okay.
and come back and get settled, and which I appreciated. He was very nice, but I also shared with him, and he was able to, we were able to talk the whole time he was running the test. And it was just a beautiful experience because he was so appreciative. And you know, he kept saying, yes, oh, here's something you can pray for. And so you know, we just had a neat experience. And another time, oh my, it was so beautiful. A lady had been called out of church to run a test, to come run a test on me.
Oh,
at the
wow.
hospital. Now, neither of these times was I very sick or anything, but the doctors were just making sure. And so they called this one technician out of church on a Sunday morning to come run this test on me. And so she did. And throughout that time, we shared, and she, you know, she was a Christian, and we prayed for each other. And we had such a beautiful time of fellowship as well as praying for each other.
Yeah.
I have, whenever I have to go to the hospital, which isn't often, I have realized that God puts me there for a purpose, and that purpose is to pray. People in hospitals need prayer so much more than a lot of people.
Yeah. If you're visiting in the hospital, as you walk down the hall, just walk slowly and pray for the people in each room. And pray for the nurses and the doctors and the technicians, the janitors, the cafeteria workers, you know, all those people really need prayer too. And Mom just brought up something that I wanted to mention too, about asking people how you can pray for them. She's talked about that quite a few times in this conversation. Usually, I mean, she talked about one guy who said he didn't want to be prayed for, but usually I have found people are very, very receptive to being prayed for, and not necessarily Christians. But if you ask, can I pray for you? And how can I pray for you? Oh, it's just beautiful, because they'll just open up to you and oftentimes start crying because nobody's asked them how they can be prayed for. And, you know, you've showed that you care and that God cares. I'm going to put a link below for a book by Ed Silvoso, where he talks about this, about asking people, you know, what they need prayer for. And he calls those their felt needs. It's what they realize that they need prayer for. People don't say, please pray for my salvation, you know, but they say, you know, I'm having financial problems or something. And when they see God answer those prayers, they're much more open to the gospel, either from you sharing it or somebody else that God brings along their path. But that is really, really one way to start planting the seeds of the gospel with people.
The other day, I had a housekeeper come in, and she was telling me about her family situation, and she has a runaway daughter who she's been looking for. And her daughter is old enough to be on her own. She's 18, but she said, the main thing I want to know that she's safe. She can live wherever she wants. I just want her to know that I care and that I need her to contact me.
Wow.
So I said, I'll be praying for that. And she appreciated that. And I will follow up on it, because she'll be back another time. And I plan to follow up on that.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah. Yeah. So I know that a lot of what we're talking about isn't about actually walking, but these are things that you can do for your, you know, for your own prayer life that you can use. And you can use a lot of these things that we've talked about while you're prayer walking also. I also wanted to mention, for some of you who, like, maybe you're not used to coming up with your own prayers, you don't know how to pray, just say, Lord, I really want to pray for these people. You know what their needs are. Please just meet whatever their needs are, and you can pray for them that way. If you're Catholic, You can pray the rosary as you're walking. You can, you know, as you're thinking about different mysteries of the rosary, think of what the fruits of those mysteries are, like Jesus being scourged at the pillar, the fruit is purity. God might put you at that point in the rosary as you're walking through this neighborhood because there's a need for purity there. And so you can be praying the rosary and praying for purity for those people. And those are things too, you guys, any of those things, now I'm talking to everybody, not just Catholics, but think of the fruit of the Spirit. You know, just memorize that list of the fruit of the Spirit, or write it down and take that card with you, and just systematically, as you go through a neighborhood, pray for those fruit of the Spirit for that neighborhood. That can be just a great way to pray if you can't think of what to pray. If you read your newspaper, your local newspaper, it'll also give you a lot of ideas of what to pray about. This has been cool. Thank you so much, Mom, for joining me.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
All right. We love you all. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.